I also had the chance to spend time today with the editor of the Concord Monitor, a major paper here. And as psyched as the common wisdom says Republicans are to go up against President Obama this year, she says her view from here is that people actually aren't that psyched at all right now. Elise, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, absolutely.
So you do this every 4 years. Does your workflow at the paper increase like exponentially because this is all happening?
Absolutely. It's dramatic. I mean, we've got regular news to cover.
Yeah.
Regular news about what real people's lives are about when they live here. And then there's all this on top of it. I got to say, for my staff, it's really fun. You know, they're covering school board meetings and they're covering, you know, John Huntsman and Newt Gingrich and stuff. So it's pretty heady, particularly for young journalists. It's fun.
When you in terms of the buzz and the amount of work and all the things you have to think about this year compared to other years, is this a more buzzy year or a less buzzy year?
It's absolutely less,
really?
To tell you the truth. Yeah, I mean, 4 years ago, because there was a Democratic race and a Republican race, there was sort of double the excitement, double the interest from readers, you know, because everybody was interested in voting, and now it's probably just, you know, 50 or 60% of the people who buy the paper every day. And I think the candidates were more fun. The stories were more fun. There was people seemed really passionate about the people who were running, and there's much less of that this time around.
So the difference is in part that obviously there's only one party who's who's contesting this, but you're saying also even just among the Republican candidates, people aren't psyched?
You know, I think there were people last time around who would have given their right arm for John McCain if he asked them to. People were really excited about him. People were really excited about Obama. They were really excited about Hillary Clinton. You'd go to parties over Christmas, and this is what people were talking about. It's not really the case. I mean, I think Mitt Romney has an awful lot of support, but you don't see people psyched. The candidates, aside from Romney, they're very different from one another, and the idea that they could pool their resources somehow and come to some, it's a bit far-fetched at this point.
Yeah. It's over before it began.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does feel like kind of a non-consequential New Hampshire primary this year.
Well,
there's no suspense. I mean, unless Romney doesn't win by 20 points. Like what else would be a relevant outcome?
I heard a guy on television talking about if he wins by merely 20 points, maybe that's 20 points in an election that he just won by 8 votes. I mean, you know, it seems pretty good. Yeah, you know, it's funny from a journalist standpoint. You sort of think Romney. It seemed like Romney was going to win when we started this thing, you know, a year ago, and we've been covering it all this time, and here we are. It's not that it hasn't been interesting along the way, but in the end, it feels like we're ending right where we started. It's very strange.
It feels like we're ending right where we started. It's strange. It is strange. I mean, the common wisdom is that New Hampshire's race is really important. Common wisdom is that Rick Santorum is surging and people really like him. Common wisdom is that Mitt Romney can't win in South Carolina. The view from here is that all of that common wisdom is bunk. Joining us now is my pal and colleague Chris Matthews, the host of Hardball, which you can catch at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern here on MSNBC. His latest book is Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero. Chris, happy New Hampshire.
Thank you. Well, I don't know about that report. That was really something. Well, because it was rich. It had a lot of anthropology in it, not just in the mores fight between Rick Santorum and the rest of the world, but in the mood setting. I mean, that reminded me of the way politics was before it got exciting with Kennedy and that era, the 60s, the 70s. And since then, it reminded me like Denmark politics, like, oh, yeah, I guess we have to vote. That's scary when American politics becomes so routine and lacking in romance and phenomenon. There's no phenomenon to this race. What's the excitement in this race? What's the unique selling point of this election in Massachusetts or New Hampshire up here this year? It's like there's no unique selling point.
That was the strange thing to me about seeing a big crowd and really wanting to go to a Santorum event because everybody was telling me he is getting the crowds, and you could see I was really excited. There's a lot of people here. They tell us we can't even get in, and then I get in, and everybody's bummed out, and they're booing him, and they're yelling at him, and nobody's happy to hear what he's saying, and nobody was there as a supporter. I mean, I'm sure it's not true everywhere in the state, but people are not psyched about this race.
You know, I get criticism for saying that back in 2004 I got a thrill up my leg from Obama speaking because he spoke about our country in an exciting way. He didn't talk about himself, he talked about our country and its potential to live up to its ideal of a guy named Barack Hussein Obama from an exotic background, if you will, becoming president of the United States. It is the only country in the world that would actually be like this. And that was exciting. Romney is just the guy whose turn it is. And I hear her, the editor of the paper, the Concord paper, talk about you could have predicted this election in your sleep. that this was going to be Romney for regional reasons. He's the local guy. He gets elected. What else is new? And I think that's pretty sad. But I do think it's interesting, even on the liberal side, the progressive side, Obama has yet to excite the base yet. So we're going to see maybe it's symmetric in the sense that this is a year without excitement, but there will be a crash of views here. It's going to come because Romney has married into the right to get this nomination. He has basically seduced the right by claiming he's a conservative. In fact, a right-winger in many ways, a hawk in many ways. Not that he was what he was all those years up in Massachusetts. And growing up, he wasn't a hawk growing up or a right-winger in any way. Pro-choice, open to gay rights in many ways. And now he's saying, oh, that's not true. So he's trying to erase that and move to the right. I do believe the Obama people, the strategists, and I don't want to be coldly political about this, but they now have him in a boxed canyon. He is going over to the right. They can just slam the door on him. He's there. And I think that's what he's done to himself.
When Romney, I mean, we're in this discussion, we are assuming it's going to be Romney. We can talk about whether anybody else has a
presented. They're strong.
Yeah, they're strong. But for them to be strong, so strong here and increasingly strong in South Carolina, does sort of feel like a door is closing, but anything could happen. In fact, anything could happen between now and Tuesday. This might get exciting.
By the way, I love it when you said that, because the phenomenon of politics is what saves it from being boring.
Yeah, it is.
Because even after Florida, even if he wins these 4 in a row, after Florida, months and months of exposure, knowing he's the Republican nominee in effect, and all those weeks and months really from, say, well, from February right through November. All that exposure, that's a dangerous time for him. All that time to do opposition research, for him to make a mistake, for people in the party to have problems with him.
When is the tipping point from when the Republican also-rans and the Republican would-be contenders stop feeling desperate, oh, geez, this is my last chance to stop Romney, and start feeling like they've got to get on board the Romney train? When do they stop trying
That's
to
a great question. I can only think in the near term, Saturday night and Sunday morning. Remember the movie? Saturday night and Sunday morning. That's this weekend. It's a doubleheader. Yeah. It's an overnight. And I see, this is not original with me, certainly after interviewing him last night, clearly Newt Gingrich is loaded for bear. And I wouldn't get into he's angry. That's petty. It's not high school. He knows he has to get back on his feet again. He knows he's been beaten hard. He's got to get back. And there's a bit of a personal animus, which will make it interesting in any competition. And Romney knows he's coming. Yeah. But that fight will occur. There will be blood tomorrow night. Isn't
that the same calculus for every single one of these guys? I mean, except for the ones who have given up and are still around trying to get a book deal or something. I mean, isn't it the case that the only way that any of them can move forward is over Romney's back? So
yeah, he has to break. But they almost have to win the intramurals first. They almost have to become the non-Romney first, and that's the problem.
Irrelevant after Tuesday.
Clearly coming in South Carolina, there has to be a main challenger at that point.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the main challenger? Perhaps the one who wins up here comes in second up here. But I'll tell you, that whole discussion you had in your piece there about Rick Santorum. I watched Rick Santorum develop. Yeah. A lot of people voted for him in Pennsylvania thinking he was like any other moderate Pennsylvania Republican. The long tradition going back to Bill Scranton and the Eisenhower Republicans and Hugh Scott and Schweiker, the first Schweiker, they all thought he was one of them. And then he got in there and they watched him for a while develop into this guy who was a homeschooler, extremely pro-life, extremely anti-gay in terms of gay rights and gay being. And they said, wait a minute, this guy isn't the kind of Republican like Tom Ridge. He's not a suburban, regular Republican. Yeah. He's different. And I think what you're seeing here in New Hampshire is the realization that he is different. He's not a regular Republican. And I'll say this in his favor. He doesn't change. It's always been Rick, and Rick will have problems with modern mores, and he doesn't. The trouble, I think, with the kids when he meets with young people, he doesn't want to listen. Yeah. If he wants to hear, has he ever said, you know, you're right? You know, Barry Goldwater, who everybody thought was the principal man, and he was a wonderful man in many ways, very libertarian, and he was very good on gay rights, too, at the end, very much, and pro-choice and all. Barry Goldwater was on the floor of the United States Senate one time, and they were debating whether 18-year-olds could vote or not. And somebody said, you know, it seems pretty primitive now to say this, you know, we make them fight. We draft them at 17, 18. We send them out there and we arm them and say, go kill Germans, go kill Japanese, go kill communists. Shouldn't we let them vote on that? And you know what? Goldwater said, you know what? You're right. And changed his vote on the floor.
Wow.
And so I changed his whole philosophy about it. So, but as Rick Santorum ever said, you know, right, it's a constitutional issue. It's not a religious issue. And although I disagree with you on that based on my religious training and belief, you know what? That's not for me to say.
Never in a million years.
He doesn't do it.
Chris Matthews, I love talking to you.
That's a song title, isn't it? Johnny Mathis.
It's good to be with you here, Chris. Thanks. All right, Chris Matthews, of course, host of Hardball here on MSNBC. His newest book is called Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, which you should buy.